to Leading Entrepreneurs of the World. My name is Glenn Turansky. I'm a member of the advisory board here at One Business World. Leading Entrepreneurs of the World features entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders presenting on cutting-edge topics and the latest industry developments. Today, we're very pleased to welcome leading global social enterprise entrepreneur, venture capitalist, speaker, and game changer, Marissa Fayer. Marissa is the founder and CEO of HERhealthEQ. Marissa is a 20-year life science and business executive who has built several companies into world-class organizations. Marissa is also a great champion of women's health equity around the world. And at HERhealthEQ, her vision and her goal is to reduce female mortality in developing nations by providing access to medical device equipment, creating an equitable standard of care. Women are the cornerstone of the family unit. When a woman becomes ill and does not receive the care she needs, the entire family unit is at risk of greater financial distress and poor health. At HERhealthEQ, Marissa and her team focus on providing equipment involved in the treatment of the top non-communicable diseases that impact the developing world, which includes cancers affecting women, maternal health issues, diabetes, as well as heart disease. Marissa, we're very happy to have you join us today. We look forward to your presentation, and afterwards we'll have a little bit of a conversation and some Q&A. So all yours. Thank you. Welcome.
Glenn, thanks so much. Well, you kind of already did the first page, so I'm thrilled. And so just the reason why I guess I'm qualified to talk about sustainable philanthropy is that because of the work I do at HERhealthEQ, the work I do with my clients, some of the advisory work that I do, and a lot of the corporate work that I do, nonprofit or profit work, is kind of what got me thinking about sustainable philanthropy. And so I guess that's why I'm here today. So I'm very excited to be here. Thanks so much for having me. And so when people think about philanthropy, a lot of people think about this, these doom and gloom images and these, we have to help people out. And truly the core of philanthropy is helping people in need and people who need help. But it's also this other side, which is also, helping female entrepreneurs, getting kids laptops in school to further their education, high-tech hospitals, new infrastructure. So philanthropy is helping on so many different levels. And so it doesn't always have to be this emergency disaster relief, doom and gloom. And so there is traditional philanthropy, and that's, I think, what a lot of people are used to. And so that's kind of where you give everything away for free, and we're always asking for money continuously. Companies are very dependent on the money that they receive. And so are the beneficiaries, the people who receive the philanthropy. They're very reliant on it. And it doesn't create the best solution, in my opinion. And one of the other things that traditional philanthropy has is that there's a very large administrative cost associated with it. There's stats that go back from like 30% of some of these large NGOs go to admin. That is 30% of the money that people have donated or have given them. And that doesn't go to their intended recipients. And so, traditional philanthropy is necessary for certain areas. So humanitarian, natural disasters, the poorest quarter of the world. And one of the things that traditional philanthropy continues is this cycle of poverty. And obviously, I think you can tell, I'm not the biggest fan of traditional philanthropy. It's 100% needed in certain areas, but I don't like this idea of this continuous cycle of poverty. And so this continuous cycle of not having access to education, to healthcare, to economic opportunity. And the problem with this is if the cycle is never broken, it just continues. And so I think an example is really helpful here. if a mother is sick, and she's not able to work any longer, that oftentimes means that her children, most especially her girls, are pulled out of school. And so the girls have to take care of the family. They don't get to finish their education, which means they don't have economic opportunities to grow and to develop and to get a paying job or a better job, or they have families very early. And so the cycle continues. The same can be said if somebody is struggling with a farming community and it just keeps perpetuating and they don't have a way to maybe purchase an insecticide or purchase something that would help. And so this continuous cycle continues, and there's no way to escape it. And things need to change. And I think we're at this inflection point that everyone's understanding that it's time for it to change. And so as I'm talking about sustainable philanthropy, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's still philanthropy, but it's philanthropy with a twist. And so this philanthropic capital, you can change the cycle of exactly what I was just talking about. So it's focused on improvements and less on aid. Oftentimes it's revenue generating, and there are returns on the investments, and it's less of a handout. And so organizations are able to sustain themselves. Families are able to sustain themselves. And the biggest part of this is that philanthropy is most impactful because you're supposed to leave beneficiaries in a better place. And you're supposed to leave. That's the point of it. You're supposed to have the ability to leave. And one of the things that we've seen really hard in COVID-19 is that a lot of these global NGOs, what happened is when the pandemic hit, they pulled out, they pulled their staff out, they pulled their money out. Nobody knew it was going to happen. And so the problem with that is these families, these companies, these organizations that are not sustainable, a lot of them aren't able to survive. So the fact that incredible amounts of people have gone back into the cycle of poverty because they were reliant on handouts, they were reliant on philanthropy, and they are now back in that cycle. Companies who were supporting them, they pulled their investments out, they pulled their aid out because they just didn't know. And because of that, those companies are now back looking for money. And it's created not a great cycle. And so sustainable philanthropy can help to even out the cycle of philanthropy. It really works, honestly, in almost any industry and in any type of philanthropy, in agriculture, in education, in healthcare improvements, financing for small businesses, for women entrepreneurs, for any entrepreneurs. And this is not to say that financial support through traditional philanthropy is not needed, because I will 100% say, especially as a nonprofit CEO, absolutely need money, absolutely need support for our programs and work. And what I think actually is most impactful, in addition to capital, is other ways to help. And that's part of the sustainability. Corporations who are highly profitable, if they give back part of their revenues into philanthropic causes that are aligned to their business, just imagine how much growth can happen on this sustainable philanthropy side, on the philanthropy side. If private equity approaches a social sector as looking for impact and profits, not just profits, and not just impact. Individuals that can help. So a lot of nonprofits, they actually, of course, we'll go back to, of course, need money, but they also need help. They need connections. They need help talking. They need help doing the work. They need strategic thinking. And this is how other people can help. This is how this entire cycle of sustainability works. And so foundations are thinking about different ways to give back, to help. And that's why you're starting to see a lot of these social entrepreneurship programs. You're starting to see a lot of these foundations that are asking for programs of how you can be revenue generating, how you can support yourselves in the future. And we're at this point where it's really important to start changing like where the world is. And it probably seems pretty theoretical, but I'll go through I thought this might be helpful as a diagram. And I'll use HERhealthEQ for sure as an example. And so there's money, there's a cause. So there's money that we have had donated to us. Our social cause is healthcare for women. You add those two together, we can help women in developing countries. And so HERhealthEQ's mission is to help women in developing countries, non-communicable diseases. And our goal is really to help by the end of 2025 to help 1 million women. And so we know how to do that. So putting the money and the cause together, we help women. Because we are a social company and a sustainable company, a lot of our work is revenue generating. So developing countries have access to spend on healthcare. People have access to and extra capital to spend on equipment, and they actually want to. And so the money that's generated from that then doesn't get reinvested. Like, I'm not going to become rich because of this. That money gets reinvested into our other programs. So we start a program in India. Let's just say we have revenues of $500,000 over 3 years. That's great. That $500,000 then gets to be split into 3 other programs, one in Colombia, one in Brazil, one in Vietnam. Great. That cycle continues, raise more capital and more revenue. That then turns, we turn 1 into 3 and 3 into 9 and 9 into 27, and it just keeps going. So the money gets reinvested. And at that point, as an organization, we're also able to pay our staff. We're able to not continuously raise money and ask for money. Again, nonprofits will always, always be welcome to have money come into their organization. That's core to what we do. But we don't need it to survive. And if another pandemic happens, or something happens, or I decide to take a vacation for a year, organization keeps going because it's not sustainable, because it's sustainable and it is allowed and continuously keeps going. And so the most important part of sustainable philanthropy is that the impact gets multiplied. And that's what everybody's really looking for. And you need sustainable philanthropy to break this traditional cycle that I was talking about, this poverty cycle before. And so if you break any single one of these cycles, the cycle is broken. So you eliminate low income and, by having access to a better life. So you have your health. A woman, I'll use the same example again. Instead of it being the woman's not healthy, just imagine the woman is healthy. She's able to work. She can send her kids to school. Those kids, they potentially go on to college, or they work at a company, small or large, whatever it happens to be, wherever you happen to be, whatever you happen to be in the world. This is not solely US focused. This is actually rest of the world focused. And so you're able to work. You're able to then invest in yourself. You'll be able to be productive, and you no longer have low income. This cycle is broken. Talk about it another way, that an investment into a farmer, maybe they want to start a goat milk factory. And by factory, I mean, could be in the backyard. And so you start with an investment into one goat. You get to milk that goat, you sell the milk, maybe as a result of that, you can, you provide money and have money for better food for your family. They're healthier. And then you have additional money because everybody is not, is very highly productive. And they're able to go to school, to, get jobs. They're able to potentially buy 2 more goats. And then you sell it even further. This is just money that comes back into the family. And that money that always comes back into the family almost always goes back into the community as well. That's the really important part of it. And so, these can be microloans. This can be access to education. This could be access to healthcare, access to schools, everything. And so a lot of this is not new, but the way to do it is new, and the access to do it is new. And it works because there's new programs in place that have more or less always been around, but they've never been popular. And one of the few great benefits of COVID-19 is that people are valuing impact a lot more than they're evaluating their capital. And so people are looking for impactful ways to help. And a lot of people want returns. And I'm not just talking about investments. This is also philanthropic capital. This is, through donations, but in a more strategic and directed manner. And so there's donor advised funds and, quasi equity and quasi debt structures. There's blended capital. There's impact loans. This is becoming actually its own field in itself. And so I think what's really interesting is that these existed for a while, but they're now becoming far more popular. And this quote is from one of the great impact investors, the Pritzker family. And I know that they're highly controversial, but they also do a lot of significant charity work. And sustainable philanthropy, listen, you're creating opportunity. That's all that philanthropy should be. You're creating opportunities for change and for a break in the cycle. And so, and really people are looking for just access to more and access to a better life. And we made the switch as an organization. HERhealthEQ made the switch from a very traditional philanthropy. When I founded it 5 years ago, I didn't know that all of this existed. And so the fact that here we were doing traditional philanthropy, I was continuously fundraising as a person and as an organization, and I felt that I probably had more value doing the work than fundraising. And so, we thought about how we can be more sustainable, why is this, so hard? How do we multiply what we're doing? And I realized that it was the sustainable philanthropy side that can really probably change our equation and impact more people than we planned for in the beginning. And this is so important because this is empowering local communities. This is not for us. This is not for the people who are running the organization. People who have nonprofits and support nonprofits, they're looking for impact. And they're looking for empowering local, economies. They're looking for business growth. They're looking for creation of jobs and ownership. And these beneficiaries really, they're looking to be independent. When we get something for free, it's often not valued. But when you have to work so hard for it, it's the most amazing thing. And you value it for every single moment that's part of who you are and while you own it. And people don't want handouts. They want access. They want a chance. They want an opportunity. And through all of those, that creates equity. And that's why this switch is important. The other reason is that this ensures organizations such as ours, such as so many NGOs out there, can sustain ourselves. So we can pay our staff an appropriate salary. We don't have to have our staff, our team members working 3 jobs just so that they can work and live. That's not fair, and that doesn't help an organization. And so it's really important that we as organizations can support ourselves. We create more impact because we have more money. Unfortunately, it's oftentimes a very capitalistic society, but we have to understand that when you have more money, you can create more impact. So in order for organizations and philanthropy to create more of an impact, you need the money to do that. You can, of course, get continuous donations, which, if you're able to do that, that's wonderful and that's great. But if you can make that money yourselves, then you can continue to make that impact. You have to remember that NGOs, nonprofits, we're companies too. The only differentiator, besides the tax side of it, is that we're not becoming rich, and we reinvest all of the money made into future programs. And through that investment into other programs, that's how the impact is made. The other side of this is when you're sustainable, you're able to pivot. So we were never in our mind thinking that we would be doing a US program. Never. As an organization, HERhealthEQ supports developing countries. COVID-19 hit, we weren't able to do any of our work. And so as a result of that, we had to pivot. We actually started to do a program here in the US, in rural Mississippi. And if we had donor funds that were only allocated to a program in Kenya, we would never have been able to do that. And so we had the ability to pivot to what the world needs and where we are and what's happening in the world. And that, I think, is incredibly important for organizations to stay solvent, to stay relevant. And that's what a lot of people are looking for right now. So, a lot of people think that philanthropy is easy, because it is. There's so many platforms in order to give. And I think this year, these past 2 years, we've seen it more than ever. 2020 was the most philanthropic year that anybody has ever seen. We hope that continues in 2021. It's not looking that way, but we're hoping that it does. But because of all this philanthropy, there's so many options. So, you could start a fundraiser on Facebook, on Pledge, on GoFundMe, on Global Giving, on Blackbaud, like on all of these platforms, which is incredible for organizations to have these opportunities. It also makes it very hard for organizations and companies, because now we are competing with literally everybody. And so, again, it makes it harder for an organization to sustain ourselves. And so you have to think about innovative financing mechanisms, which is the sustainable part of philanthropy, that can support us instead of being competition with every single person in the world, because every cause is important and every cause is personal. And so we need to find avenues in order to make our jobs continuous. And so, this is the future for so many. As I said, earlier in the discussion, this is probably not going to work for humanitarian aid, for emergency disasters, for the poorest one quarter of the entire world. This will not work. Traditional philanthropy and aid is incredibly important there. And that's where it should be focused and it should be used. Grant-making organizations don't want to support companies forever. I can't tell you how many times I get the question from people that we apply, for grants to, is, okay, great. So happy to give you this grant, but we don't want to give you grants for the rest of your waking life. So how do you become sustainable? And this is one of the trends that's starting to emerge. The other biggest part of this is that developing countries, they have capital to spend. They have the ability to spend money. They actually want to spend the money. this reinforces their systems, their infrastructure, their healthcare. To be beholden to somebody else, that is an antiquated, traditional philanthropy thought and mechanism. So they want to purchase the equipment that's going to go in their hospitals. They just can't pay the full top price. Maybe they need a piece of equipment that's the second generation as opposed to the 10th generation. Maybe they need a down rev. Maybe they need something that has a scratch in it. Maybe they need an innovative financing mechanism in order to be able to afford it. Maybe it's a type of loan that they get to pay back over 3 years versus an immediate only one-time payment. And so this goes back to circular economy as well. This goes back to being able to recycle equipment, recycle clothing, recycle cars, recycle different farming equipment, recycle, seeds if there's excess in some location, things like that. So this turns into a cyclical economy. And this is what this new phrase of circular economy is. And so developing countries, they want access. They just want an opportunity. And so it's it's important for the countries, it's important for the organizations, it's important for the beneficiaries as well. And again, one of the bigger trends that's starting to pop up is that employees are requiring this, and consumers are requiring this from the companies they purchase from the companies that they work for. So what do you do with this? And that's always the bigger question. And so, this isn't the answer for everything, but it's the answer for several things. So infrastructure projects, as I was saying, buying this wonderful woman her cow, buying some seeds to start a farm, high-tech medical equipment, even low-tech medical equipment. There's so many applications for this. And, I don't want this to seem so out of reach. There's so much that you can do as a person, as an individual, as a company, as a philanthropist. And this is not just for the richest of the rich. This is not just people who have funds. This is not just for people who have a lot of money. This is for anybody. So it's really important to understand where your money is going and that you're supporting companies that potentially have this sustainability at the core of who they are. You can also look into some newer organizations, and these larger organizations that are out there, USAID and CARE and, Doctors Without Borders. Obviously, I'm in the health space, so that's what I gravitate towards. But, Feeding America, all of these incredible organizations, and they absolutely need support. But there's also smaller organizations that need support as well. And they might, because they're larger, they actually might be more efficient. They might be sustainable. They might be doing something that's really interesting to you in a new way and that resonates with you. And you have to put your money to work in something that's important to you. Philanthropy is so personal, and you need to make it work for what you want it to. Organizations and people want to grow. They just need help. They need help to get started. And that's what sustainable philanthropy can do. And you have to empower and impact the change that's important. So thank you. And I'd love to kind of, maybe we should have here's all my contact information, but I know that there's probably some questions and I ran through that quickly, but I kind of get really excited. So
no, thank you, Marissa. Very, very well done. Very passionate. It clearly comes across in the way you present and cover your topic. Hey, quick follow up. What are you doing? What are you doing in Mississippi? You mentioned that you didn't specify the project. I was just curious what kind of work you're doing down there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've partnered with Plan A Health, and we have deployed a fetal monitor and they have a mobile van that's going around rural Mississippi, and they just launched this month, actually end of April. And so providing healthcare for rural Mississippi, of which it is so hard to get around, and there's not access in some of these rural communities. And so we've partnered with them on one piece of equipment, and we're probably going to be deploying other pieces of equipment as they continue to expand their programs.
There's a lot of spots in the U.S. just like that.
Yeah,
I'm a big Amtrak guy, and if you ever take the train, the Cardinal, from Chicago to New York, it spends a good chunk of the trip in Kentucky and West Virginia.
Wow.
And you go through some pretty desolate towns that are technically still stops, but they almost look like ghost towns.
Wow.
You know, some of the houses as you go past are boarded up, or they look like they're falling down. So a lot of that can otherwise be local for sure. And as you said, that's a great way to pivot too, and having the flexibility to be able to put the dollars to work. You know, I do a lot of work with not-for-profits. I'm on a number of boards, and it's always very important about the mission, right? And where is the funding going to? You know, and a lot of what you talked about kind of remind me of some of the scriptures, right? Do you feed a person a fish, or do you teach them to be a fisherman?
Exactly.
Right, and it's kind of along those lines.
Right, and that's how you change. You know, then that's how you change. Like, you know, again, if you teach somebody to fish, you've just fed the entire community. If you give somebody and you know they purchase you know, certain types of equipment or whatever, they can plow a field, they can run a hospital, they can treat people, as opposed to just, you know, coming in, doing one treatment and leaving. And I think those are people who are our partners for sure. Doctors that come in, but they don't leave their equipment. So they take it with them and they provide these services, which are so incredible and important. But, you know, from my perspective, I want them to have the equipment forever. I don't want to have to go back multiple times. And, you know, if they need us to, of course, but, you know, we want them to use it. That's the point of this. And, you know, from us, all we ask in return is after the obvious, you know, monetary side of it, is that you use it. You tell us how many people you've treated, because for us, that's exciting.
Sure.
And that should be something that's exciting to the people who are using it to report back, because they should be proud of that. And you treat one woman, you've just saved her life, and you've saved the life of her family. And, you know, I sometimes get frustrated, like, oh, it's not being used enough. But you know what? Like, imagine if I was that one woman and I had access to treatment. And obviously we're striving for more than one, but imagine, and it's one person at a time. And imagine how that person's life has just been changed, and imagine how her family and community's life have been changed. Like, there is, you know, there's a cycle to this, and it's not just one person. And nobody is individual. And in the States, we're you know, in Europe, we're very individual people, but in developing countries, it's very community focused. And so this one person, and, you know, imagine what they can do to impact the entire and change the entire community. And that I think is so profound and impactful.
As you said during the presentation, to the extent that someone is treated, they're able to still go to work, right? They're not home. They're not, you know, they're not incapacitated. They're able, and that becomes exponential, because it just does that much good going forward. You know, sustainability has obviously become an incredibly important topic. You touched on it with employees wanting to know that they're picking places to work that have these types of goals in mind. If they have any kind of corporate philanthropic program, people are interested in where those dollars are going. Yeah. Right? You get in the investment community now, there's funds that specialize in impact investing, making a difference in sustainability. The concept of ESG is everywhere, right? Environmental, social, and governance, of which sustainability, you know, obviously certainly part of that foundation as well. So it's a topic that's come when you work with a given spot. And let's use the equipment example again.
Yeah.
How does the local community get trained? How does that, because you can get even if it's a used piece of equipment. Okay, other than the on-off button, what else do you do with it? Who helps with that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It's one we get frequently. And so from HERhealthEQ's perspective, obviously, so we provide the training, or we partner with other organizations that provide the training. It also depends what it is. If it's something like you're saying, like that, that can just get plugged in and great, then fine. But oftentimes there's significant training that goes along with it. The other aspect of that is that nurses and doctors, they are highly educated, regardless of which country you go into. They all have to pass this, relative same certifications. And so they are highly educated. And so they're just lacking the equipment to do their job. And that's why they come to us and actually ask for what they need. We are not prescriptive on saying this is what you need. They're asking us for what they need to treat these non-communicable diseases that we focus on. Cancers affecting women, diabetes, heart disease, maternal health. There are very specific pieces of equipment that they need to do that. So training happens, either they're trained, or we or a team that we're in alliance with goes in and trains them. There's a second aspect of this, which plays a lot to our, as an organization, sustainability, is we also provide service for the equipment. So there are a lot of organizations that go in and send containers filled of equipment and to countries. They don't exactly know what they need. They think they need this. They send them a lot of equipment, and it is wonderful and admirable that they do that. And it's incredible. The problem is a lot of that is broken, or a lot of that gets damaged within a year. And so the fact that there's not an ability to service that equipment, to maintain it, is a really big problem. And actually what we've been finding in a lot of the discussions we have with developing countries' healthcare systems is that that's actually on the top of their list when they're asking about it, a potential donation or purchase of equipment. How is the equipment going to be maintained? And so from our perspective, we provide a minimum of a 2-year service contract. That's part of the cost. That's part of the program. That is no additional cost on top of what you're getting. That is who we are as an organization. Either the equipment, can be serviced internally at the location. So we have teams that we go in through partner organizations. They can go in and service it. We send it part, or it has to be sent back, or we send technicians in. And so that plays to our sustainability to make sure that this equipment doesn't wind up in a dumpster. And it's a horrible fact. It's 70% of all donated medical equipment ends up in the dumpster within 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, not 17, 70. Like it's disgraceful. And the intention is not just to move trash to another location. The intention is to hit the impact. And so the part of the sustainability is making sure that service is available and training is available. And, and the reason we know that things are working and is in working order, and that's why we ask for our impact metrics. It's not for us to update our website and to say we've hit all, we've impacted the lives of all these people. That's a great benefit of it. That's not why we do it. We ask them to tell us how many people in a quarter they've treated, so that we know that they're using the equipment. And we can tell if you're not using it or you give us 0, that's a further discussion to say, why aren't you using it? Oh, something broke. Well, why didn't you tell us? It has to be a conversation if they're not preemptive about it. It's a great question on the.
I learned my lesson. The first car I ever bought, I bought a 1984 Datsun. They were still called Datsuns back then. Datsun Sentra. And I didn't take the extended warranty. And sure enough, the transmission went just over 36,000 miles, and nothing was covered. So
yeah.
Interesting though, when you replace transmissions, they're reconditioned. They're not new. So I found it interesting, like you said, with some of the equipment, even if it's scratched or something like that, that it's obviously still perfectly fine. It may not be the shiniest piece of equipment, but it's still able to do some good and do some impact.
I mean, in our fancy hospitals in the States and in Europe, it is actually their policy every 2 to 3 years to replace most of their equipment. It's on a cycle. It's part of their capital expenditures, which is fortunately, one of the reasons why our healthcare system is so expensive.
Yeah.
But
Oh, yeah.
that equipment oftentimes gets sent back to the manufacturer, and they resell it. But they don't resell all of them, because they're not in every market. And the other side of this is, as a nonprofit, we can provide tax deductions and goodwill and press and everything associated with donations. And we do the facilitation, and it's out of their hands, and they get, all the great accolades for it, which, as they should. It is a significant amount of money. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not always money. It's sometimes equipment, or like we partnered with UPS. That's a significant amount of capital that we do not have to spend any longer to ship our equipment around the world, because UPS Humanitarian has taken on that burden for us and that cost. It takes them no money to put one box on a plane going to Ghana, that they're already going to Ghana.
Planes going that way anyway,
the
right?
plane's going, one box, two boxes, 0 box, it doesn't matter. It costs them nothing. To us, it would have cost thousands of dollars. And now we can spend that money on something else. And that's why corporations are really important. And you said this before, almost every single corporation has a CSR program tied to them. And so, and obviously it depends on what they want to focus on. Some are focused on health, some are focused on racial justice, some are focused on women's empowerment, some are focused on economic prosperity. There's so many things, of course, in this world to focus on. You have to find the ones that resonate with what you're doing, and ask them to partner with you to utilize their capital, their resources to help, so that you can do more as an organization. And I think like that's a really important partnership. It's something that we value really, really highly. And I think that's where a lot of people can also help, because maybe it's not them who are providing the capital directly, but what they're doing is they're providing those connections to the capital. And it's not their capital, but they've facilitated those introductions. They've facilitated making that happen. They're internal champions for something that's important to them. And that, again, it goes back to how does everybody talk about sustainability? If somebody is an expert in logistics, or in sales in developing countries, like those are people that we look to and we anchor on, because they have expertise. I don't want their money. I want their expertise to help us do what we're doing better and more efficiently.
Yeah, you're launching, in a way, you're launching entrepreneurial ventures, but you're launching people's well-being in these places by establishing, you used the word earlier, infrastructure, but along those lines for creating paths forward. You touched on a topic you just mentioned that's kind of one of my in the healthcare side. We spend an inordinate amount of time building these temples of technology, right? The shiniest machine on the East Coast, that we've got in the hospital. And obviously, technology can be wonderful and can certainly drive outcomes. But when you think about it, when somebody comes into the emergency department, to say in a typical inner city, right? First question they get asked as part of the intake is, what insurance do you have, right? How about asking the question, did you eat today? Or, hey, I see you wrote down this street address. Can you give me just describe the neighborhood for me, right? Somebody comes in with like an asthma attack or a respiratory, and meanwhile, if you actually ask, then you realize, wow, they live next to a smelting plant, or any kind of pollutant kind of environment. It would help you understand it a little bit better.
Yeah, and you know what? They aren't asked, oh, do you see the scratch in that piece of equipment? No, you don't, because nobody cares. No, nobody cares. And again, nobody cares anywhere. And it's not that they don't care, because of course it's important for image of a hospital and things like that. But if it's 2 years old, most people won't know.
Yeah,
if it's 10 years old, it's still functional. The ultrasounds that probably my mother had when maybe when I was born, the technology is relatively the same. I mean, granted that's 40 years, so probably a little different, but the difference between what happened, from my first nephew to my last niece, it's the same technology. So why, you could use the same pieces of equipment. Of course, things are better. And Glenn, exactly what you were saying, like, yeah, there's always this like, temple of technology. Absolutely. A lot of the core technology hasn't changed. And ultrasounds, they used to be really, really bulky and you have to like wheel them around. I mean, they're now the size of this mouse.
Right.
And they have a little dongle cord, and you use them and like, it's incredible. Does everybody need those? No. Can other people use some of the other bigger pieces of equipment, or the first generation, of those that might be a little bigger than this mouse, but it's still the size of a laptop. Still works.
Right. Well, but all of these, as you said, you're breaking and you're putting X's through certain pieces of that cycle of poverty, right? Whether it's low income, whether productivity, whatever the case may be, by breaking out of that, you're getting an opportunity to redirect people, the community, in a different direction. Perhaps again, maybe they never would have thought, like, we could have started. Wow, not only did I get this healthcare piece, but now I can actually, again, I could almost create my own little business here. I could take something and repurpose it, and before you know it, they're becoming an entrepreneur, and then they're spreading that message to someone else. And before you know it, as you said, it really does start to multiply. And reinvestment is, as you said, is so important. I mean, the fact that, again, as you said, traditional philanthropy, you're always going to need the American Red Cross, right? You're going to have people that respond to instant humanitarian crises. But then those do pass, right? The flood waters recede, and then it's everything else. It's okay. How do we pick up the pieces now here and drive it back, get it at least back to where it was, and then moving forward. And that's, when you look at organizations, that's the S word that they ask is okay, this is great. I'm gonna give you, I believe in you. So here's an impact loan. Here's some investment PE money, all of the ideas you talked about. But then in a traditional sense, all right, show me what you're gonna do with that, right? How are you gonna take that and make a difference and turn it and make that kind of outcome all the more positive for not only the person affected, but for the community at large. I think people, from a philanthropic standpoint, you always feel good. I mean, I do a lot in education here, and I see the power of scholarship money. And that was one of your poverty cycle pieces, was education here as well. You give a child an opportunity to go to a school that perhaps they couldn't otherwise get to, and it makes a difference. It makes a difference for the rest of their life.
Yeah, it's those children, that have received the scholarship, and I should look for this study actually, because it was a stat I heard recently. It's those children that have received the scholarship that go on to do all these wonderful things. They do really well on average, and they're the ones that then contribute into other scholarship funds or donate a significant amount of money into philanthropic ventures. And so, again, it's not a handout, it's a cycle. They're trying to help others. They're trying to empower others and trying to allow other people to have opportunities. So because you broke that cycle through a scholarship, imagine what these other people are now able to do and to grow into. And that's important.
You're enabling individuals and communities to pay it forward, almost from the get-go, and have them move forward and create that path to their own sustainability, which is really remarkable. So congratulations, just wonderful to meet you, and it was just a tremendous presentation. You're doing such good. You did have your contact information up on that last slide, I think.
I did.
So if people wanted to get involved or reach out, they're welcome to. But
absolutely, they can just reach out to me, Marissa Fayer, LinkedIn, online, HERhealthEQ.org, any of those.
So just the way you said that, so it's healthy. So you the E kind of sneaks in, makes believe it's a Y, right? Is
Well,
that
the HERhealthEQ, because for us, it's equipment for equity.
right?
And so
Right.
EQ.
EQ.
And so, yeah, so HERhealthEQ.
Okay.
And yeah, it's herhealtheq.org. And no, we're excited. We're excited for the future. And we're excited for a lot of the partners that we have and ones that we're looking for continuously. So
Yeah, I recognized. I looked at the website. I recognized you had a Long Island company, Henry Shinedown, as one of your
yes.
partners. You had Boston Scientific. You had some really tremendous names there. So congratulations on the company you keep and the good that everyone's doing
Thank you.
on this piece. And philanthropy is so important, and making it sustainable, as you said, is really the key. So listen, Marissa, you're the embodiment of a leading entrepreneur. Thank you for spending time with us today. We wish you nothing but success in the future. Please stay in touch with us. We'd love to hear how things are going, and you're always welcome back. Okay?
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right. See you next time. Thanks again for today. Well done.
Thank you.
Take care.